Thought I'd start early. Got about a minute and a half, so we'll wait and see who comes. Make sure you say good day so I know who's joined in. I'll start right on about 3, I think, which isn't too long. Os, guten Morgen, mein Freund. Wie geht's? Good to see you, Paul, from Germany. In Australia, it's guten Abend. Who else we got? There's a few people I see. Don't forget to leave a message so I know who is joining in. Ross Frederick, good to see you, man. Morning for you too, in Sweden, no doubt. Probably a similar time, Germany and Sweden, the same time maybe. Kenneth from Melbourne, Us. Mike, Us, good to see you. My friend Torbjörn, all the way from Norway, Us. I hope everyone's safe. The COVID virus is kind of settling down a bit, but, you know, we can't jump to conclusions yet. But we do have to get back to things as well. You know, the world can't go on living on handouts. Yeah, Australia's in a recession as a result, and I'm sure a lot of other countries are going to take many years to get back to full recovery. Urs Leo, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming. Today I'm going to read a little bit from my book again. Today I'm going to read the chapter on Osu no, the Spirit of Osu, or the Spirit of Perseverance. Us, Mike Lorden from Florida. So we've got a couple of good authors here. Mike Lorden wrote a great book on Sosai and Kyokushin. I'll put a little link down there if I can. There you go. That's a link to Mike Lorden's book, and also Mike Clark, who I really appreciate. He comes along regularly and joins in. He doesn't just watch too, he takes part and also contributes some great stuff. So we've got a couple of very popular authors right here. Deepakar from India, namaste. Good to see you, man. And John. Okay, yeah, look, I'll put it up. It'll go up. Don't forget, guys, when you if you come and watch, but also the live chat is great, and also if you can go back and check the video out in like 24 hours when it's up, or even an hour or two later, and leave an actual message down below the video. That really helps as well. Don't forget, the most important thing is to share it, pass the link on to your friends through Facebook or whatever, and let them know. Us Gaza, good to see you, man. So it's amazing. We're getting closer and closer. First in was Paul from Germany, then Frederick from Sweden, then from Norway, and then Mike Lorden from America. I hope you're safe, Mike. It's a bit crazy there. We know that. So there's a few, and now we're getting Gaza is just down the hill from here. Us Raj Kumar from Nepal, and Daniel all the way from beautiful Maitland, north of Sydney. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book today, and I'm going to digress a little bit too, because there's a few points in the book that I wanted to maybe discuss a little bit about as well. So I'm not going to do any training today. I have training. We finish this around 4, and I have training from 5 anyway. So it's great that we're back slowly. All the Kyokushin instructors in Australia would have got the message about the COVID-19. So it really is informative and helpful, and it helps you make sure that you're doing the right thing as far as returning to full operation safely. Us, Rochelle, good to see you. I was panicking there for a sec. I didn't see your name come up. Okay, guys, so I'm going to get right into the reading. And as I go, like I said, I'll digress. Torbjörn, we had our first indoor training again yesterday. Fantastic. No more than 20. That's really good to hear. Where Australia is still not quite at that level yet, but I think probably by the middle of this month, Torbjörn will be getting pretty close. Damien, good to see you. Damien Asling, thanks for coming along, man. Okay, so this chapter it's chapter 2 in the new book. And if as we go you have any questions, please feel free to leave a message and I'll try and answer the message as we go along. I have a little message. It says my connection is unstable. Did you miss some of what I said then? Because I did get a message to say unstable, which comes up from time to time. And I don't know if whilst that message is up, you're still getting feed. But anyway, so let's get going because it's an interesting section of the book and also some of the digressions that I want to add in are kind of fun as well. So this is chapter 2, Osu no Seishin, the spirit of perseverance. There is a saying in Japan, Ishinue ni sannen. Translated saying symbolizes the need to persevere at all times. It is one of the central philosophies of Kyokushin karate. It's also said that for the karateka, the saying should read Sekijo Junen, or 10 years on a rock. If the average man must persevere for 3 years, the karateka can easily take 10 years in his stride. Kyokushin is a martial art offering many things according to the immediate and long-term aims of the student. Ultimately, one realizes that transcending the kicks, the punches, and the kata, there is a special spirit in the heart of the participants. It teaches them to face the demands of daily life with a mature and enduring attitude. I'm going to make a typo there. I'm going to fix a typo, sorry. A Budoka is not easily shaken by adversity, realizing that for a person to draw near to their true potential, a never say die spirit of perseverance is required. The first hint of the cultivation of this spirit occurs in the new student when he decides to shake off the why bother attitude in training and challenge himself in little ways. One more push-up, one more squat before I rest, and so on. From these humble but vital beginnings, the desire to impose new demands upon oneself grows and grows. One learns to approach the whole of karate training as a personal challenge from which one can learn much about life. One challenges a kata and strives to understand the spirit it holds through deep concentration during hundreds, thousands of repetitions. As Masa Oyama wrote, to master one kata, to half master many. If a person practices any given kata over 3,000 times, any questions he might have about it will be resolved, and a proper understanding of the kata will naturally emerge. This takes perseverance and single-mindedness. One faces an opponent in demanding kumite and learns that the little bumps and bruises are really very minor concerns in the face of accepting the challenge of oneself on the daily battlefield of life. Kumite, sparring, and even tournament matches in many martial arts have little concept of reality or does not exist at all. In fact, some arts promote the notion that sparring and competition are not encouraged because the techniques taught are too dangerous. In such circumstances, this challenge to confront the can be used, and often is, as a way to avoid confronting one's total lack of courage, yet still refer to oneself as a martial artist. It's kind of ironic, I think, that from time to time we do meet people who address themselves as martial artists, and not only that, as very high-ranking martial artists, even to the point of 10th Dan and so on. I read about a 15th Dan the other day. Boy, oh boy. And I'm glad you're in now, Harry. Good. yet it's almost oxymoronic to regard yourself as a martial artist, yet still be full of fears. Even the attitude to life and training is the difference between Budo and merely kicking and punching. Look, we see that in UFC. There's some great people in UFC, and I've trained with a lot of them, and they are good people. But when you see some of the shouting matches and so on at the press conferences, and then you see the same thing in boxing and kickboxing and so on. Well, they're a sport whose primary objective is to make as much money as you can in a short period of time. And that's very different to, as Mike Clark mentions there, it's very different to Budo, where the primary objective of Budo is, as Funakoshi said, the perfection of the character. Okay, Tony, thanks. It's great to have you. Okay. And before I keep going, a shout out to my Patreon family. I really appreciate your help. If you're not sure, get along and have a look at the Patreon site. And if you enjoy what we're doing, then by all means, get involved. And I've got some good news for Patreon too, that I've commenced a series of mail outs which will be coming your way soon enough. Okay. So I'm setting them up and they'll be heading your way. That's a link to Patreon there. If you feel so inclined to share the love, by all means do so. Okay, let me keep going here. When that vital need to be taken outside one's comfort zone, where real growth in the martial arts occurs, is not presented, how is it truly possible for the student to become a warrior, to find the answers of life's most all sooner or later? Okay, and I said they're just outside the comfort zone. This is an area that I often come back to because the general feeling that we have in Kyokushin is to train as hard as you can every single day. And we have as Sosai's example, he used to, he was an exception. I really think he was an exception. There's always exceptions to the rule, both sides of the bell curve. But Sosai did believe that you train harder today than you did yesterday and so on. But for the general student, you don't want to go too far out your comfort zone. When you go too far, you open the door to injury and to mental fatigue as well. So that's why I say just outside the comfort zone. It's very important, this idea of going just outside the comfort zone and way outside the comfort zone. But I tend to believe that it's good to go way outside the comfort zone sometimes. A tournament should take you, unless you're head and shoulders above the rest, the tournament will take you way outside your comfort zone. And it's times like that you don't want to go, no, I'm just going to stay a little outside my comfort zone. The reason you train consistently just outside your comfort zone is for those moments when you get pushed way outside your comfort zone. And by having the experience of consistently training just outside your comfort zone, you can handle those sessions, those moments of being pushed further than normal, a lot better than average. Okay, so let me keep going there. So we will say to be taken outside one's comfort zone, real growth in the martial arts occurs is not presented. How is it truly possible for the student to become a warrior, to find the answers of life's most important questions that confront us all sooner or later? Finding the courage to seek answers outside of one's comfort zone and then going ahead and doing it is exactly what the Spirit of Osu is all about. And to that end, strong kumite is so important in the training of the karateka. Without it, how can one confidently react in a way one has not trained? There are simply too many contingencies to be considered to leave your response to luck and some misguided notion that one's ability, untested under pressure against a determined and skilled training partner, will be sufficient under all circumstances. It blows my mind the number of martial artists I meet who say, well, I don't compete because the techniques we use, you take the top fighters in any Kyokushin World Tournament, and I guarantee every single one of them, without a doubt, can handle themselves efficiently under pressure against a non-compliant opponent. The thing about, you may have good technique, but the thing about having to face a non-compliant opponent is the psychological effect of it. There is a lot to be said for being able to handle the incredible violence and intimidation under stress against a very, very violent and non-compliant opponent. How can one appreciate the amazing resilience of the human body without experience? It can be a very educational insight when you hit someone with what you thought was a finishing blow, and he is still standing there with a grin on his face without the test of true kumite. The finest blade is tempered in the most perfectly heated fire, neither too hot nor too cool. I changed that in the first edition. I said the finest blade is tempered in the hottest fire. And that probably, given a little bit of poetic license, sounds better. But the truth is that when you temper a blade, if the fire is too cold, it'll be brittle, and if it's too hot, it just won't work at all. So I changed that to the finest blade is tempered in the most perfectly heated fire, because that more suits my notion that the optimal growth is found just outside the comfort zone, not too far out. The strength of character develops. This strength of character develops in hard training, especially in strong kumite, and is known as Osu. The origin of the word Osu has a number of possible sources. The word, as it was used and taught by Oyama, comes from Oshi Shinobu, which means to persevere whilst being pushed. And I have a footnote there. It's also perfectly reasonable to translate this phrase as to persevere whilst pushing yourself. It implies a willingness to push oneself to the limits of endurance, to persevere under any kind of pressure without the slightest wavering of the heart's resolve. It describes perfectly the spirit of what it means to be a warrior, and the degree to which you may describe yourself as a warrior can be measured in terms of the degree to which this spirit is a natural and unwavering temperament within yourself. At its most profound, the word becomes ambiguous. Stand and fight, and so overcome the frailties of the human condition, which are common to everyone. I want to digress there a little bit, because this whole idea of David Avola, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming along. Yep, ask any Jack Russell. You know, what was his name? General Schwarzkopf. Remember General Schwarzkopf, who headed the U.S. The U.S. military in the first. I'm just adjusting my legs a little bit because I've been sitting in Caesar, and I have to say I'm not quite as good at Caesar now as I was 30 years ago. So I'm just going to adjust a little bit. But General Schwarzkopf tells a funny story. Us Clarence, good to see you from South Africa. General Schwarzkopf had a dachshund and an Alsatian. The Alsatian could have bitten the dachshund in half with one bite, but he said it was the dachshund that ruled the roost and controlled everything in the house. That unstable connection message has come up again, so I might wait a little. But anyway, General Schwarzkopf tells the story that the reason the dachshund dominated the Alsatian psychologically was the Alsatian would look at the dachshund and think it was himself, and the dachshund would look at the Alsatian and think that was him. Storm and Norman, that's the one. So it was a funny story. It's, you know, like Mike said, it's not the dog and the fight, it's the fight and the dog. It's very true. But this notion of being a warrior, I think it's really, really valid. I've got a couple of links that I want to include even as I'm talking here. Really interesting. And there's a few quotes that I enjoy very much. One is from a book called The Holy Science. In fact, that's it there. This is, I think, personally, one of the most profound books ever written. And it's only small. Look, it's only thin. You could read through it in an hour and a half. But to grasp its full meaning, I literally think takes a lifetime. I remember I first bought this book in 1979. and I opened the first paragraph and I read that paragraph and I put the book down and I thought, what the heck did that mean? I had no idea. I literally had no idea. But with time and multiple readings, and I have to say, I tend to think that meditation is a very underestimated, the same paragraph. And I remember thinking, why did that even trouble me? Why is it that 5 years ago I had no idea what that meant? Because it made perfect sense to me then. Okay, so this is an amazing, amazing book. And I often mention Autobiography of a Yogi, and that Sri Yukteswar is the teacher of Yogananda. Now, in this book, I'll circle back round again too, because in India they have the caste system, and you have to understand the caste system and its original meaning as opposed to the way it's used now. And I'll get back to that in a sec. But I want to this quote from Shwa, which I have in my book as well. When man becomes a little enlightened, he compares his experiences relating to the material creation gathered in his wakeful state with his experiences in dream, and understanding the latter to be merely ideas, begins to entertain doubts as to the substantial existence of the former, that is, the substantial existence of our experiences in the wakeful state. His heart then becomes propelled to learn the real nature of the universe, and struggling to clear his doubts, seeks for evidence to determine what is truth. That is so profound. In this state, man is called kshatriya, or one of the military classes, in other words, a warrior, and to struggle in the manner his natural duty, by whose performance he may get an insight into the nature of creation and attain real knowledge of it. So in other words, according to Sri Yukteswar, what determines whether someone is a warrior or not is that naturally propelled heart. I'm still adjusting my feet. I might have to sit cross-legged after a while. Is that naturally propelled heart where you're not just inquisitive about the nature of the world, you are compelled, it becomes your very nature in everything that you do to find out the meaning of a reality. And once there's a point, until now you're inquisitive, you're reading books, you're finding it interesting, you're training, and then something happens. And at that point, no longer is it just a pursuit of, that is the point, and that is the real meaning that I use to become when I say warrior. Richard, also, I sent you a little message on Facebook, Richard Kimura. I'll take that or spirit with me tomorrow. I hope everything goes well. Good luck with Richard's got a medical procedure, and the body is a treacherous friend, and as we get older, we have to deal with it. So, Richard, I'm sure everyone's the same. All the best with you tomorrow, and we'll be thinking of you, mate. Okay, so that's what it means to be a warrior. It doesn't mean that you put a military uniform on and suddenly you convert into a warrior. Many military personnel are real warriors, but a warrior can be someone who has that propelled heart to find the answers of life, no matter what their walk of life. Now, another book which I really love, and I think this makes a lot of sense, is this one. This is Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. And I'm a huge fan of poetry. I studied romantic literature and poetry at university, and Walt Whitman's one of my favorite. Now, I want to read this first paragraph to one of his poems. And this poem is called As I Pondered in Silence, and it describes a poet who's sitting there and writing poems. And as he writes, he has a vision and speaks to him. And this is very profound in relation to what we're talking about. So the poem's called As I Pondered in Silence. As I pondered in silence, returning upon my poems, considering, lingering long, a phantom arose before me with distrustful aspect, terrible in beauty, age and power, the genius of poets of old lands, and to me directing like flame its eyes, with finger pointing to many immortal songs, and menacing voice, what singest thou, it said. Knowest thou not, there is but one theme for ever enduring bards, and that is the theme of war, the fortune of battles, the making of perfect soldiers. And that's just so profound. What he's saying is all the great poems that have ever been written, it doesn't matter what they're about, the theme of war, the daily battle of life, and the making of warriors. He calls them the making of perfect soldiers, the making of warriors. Osrud, good to see you. Thanks for coming from Japan. Okay, so this notion that everything, that we have to become a warrior is really vital, because it's not just about the martial arts, it's about life. And like Mike Clark said, that's what differentiates a martial art from a sport, is that focus on the improvement and the polishing of the soul, if you like. So that's what it means to be a warrior. Let me keep going there. Okay. Talking about Oshi Shinobu, the spirit of Osu, it implies a willingness to push oneself to the limits of endurance, to persevere under any kind of pressure without the slightest wavering of the heart's resolve. That's the propelled heart that Yukteswar talks about. It describes perfectly the spirit of what it means to be a warrior, and the degree to which you may describe yourself as a warrior can be measured in terms of the degree to which this spirit is a natural and unwavering temperament within oneself. At its most profound, the word becomes ambiguous, a very personal plea to the soul to stand and fight, and so overcome the frailties of the human condition, which are common to everyone. The single word us captures most accurately the ultimate in what the art of karate, particularly Kyokushin, has to offer. One who is truly able to manifest the spirit of Osu in every word, thought, and action may be regarded as wise and brave, a true warrior. Training should first and foremost be approached in the spirit of Osu. One's daily life and the responsibilities it holds would be more completely lived if addressed in the spirit of Osu. There would be no doubts in the heart, no fears of the imagined future, and no remorse of the regretful past. The Japanese spirit is one of perseverance, whereas it is easy for Westerners to pause and rationalize with things when things get tough. Traditionally, the Japanese know only that they must persevere. When one experiences physical or mental pain in training, it should not be a signal to stop, but an opportunity to mature through a spirit of perseverance. For the beginner who is conscious of his lack of ability and is not yet comfortable facing, continue, there comes great physical, mental, and spiritual and emotional gains. All that is needed is a determined will. No one tolerates for long a person who gives up too easily. The instructor knows who tries and who doesn't. Even for one blessed with limitless natural talent, without effort and sufficient discipline to keep up the effort of constant training, it's very difficult to rise above mediocrity. On the other hand, if one lacks talent but is unwaveringly determined and disciplined in the adherence to regular hard training, progress will come without fail. With determination and the will to fight on, to keep on keeping on, one's heart becomes receptive and the instructor will go out of his way to help as best he can. I've made a note here too on the notion of persistent effort. And it's often challenged by the notion of boredom. People will get in touch with me and say, I'm just a bit bored with training. And I feel for them because 9 times out of 10, it's not their fault. It's their instructor's fault because what the instructor is presenting is not complete. So naturally, there's going to be a sense of boredom can set in. But when you think about it, you think boredom has nothing to do with long-term effort. Length of training and boredom are completely unrelated. You look at yoga, for example. If you've ever done yoga for many years, perhaps it's hatha yoga of one form. It might be Ashtanga, or it could be Bikram, or it could be Iyengar flow, a single form. Or look at Tai Chi people. They spend years and years focused on that single Tai Chi form. Okay? The practice remains unchanged. The routine is the same year after year, but the improvement comes steadily over time. And another good example is meditation. At first, meditation is a real challenge. To be able to concentrate and stay focused for more than 6 seconds is beyond most people. But if you hang in there, what happens is before long, you want to meditate. The process is exactly the same. So in karate as well, the process of training for the white belt, the blue belt, the green, the brown, the black, the second dan, the fourth dan, the sixth dan is exactly the same. Of course, what goes on in the mind is what makes a difference. Okay? And the big problem with repetition in doing basics, so many people go, I'm just sick of the basics, man. It's not the basics. It's the clarity of objectives when you do basics. If you have a clear objective in mind, and that can be, I think it should be just one objective. It may be, for example, the rotation around the spine. It may be the feeling of the push-pull. It may be the double hip motion. It may be the chamber and the hip movement. If you go into training with one single objective, I promise you'll never get bored again, because every training session will be such a challenge. And this is why we ask those 3 magic questions at the end of training. And Gaz's there. Maybe you've been with us the training. At the end of every hard training session, we sit down, we ask 3 questions. What did I do well? What didn't I do well? And what am I going to do about it next time? And therein lies the objective for your next training session. You can't wait to get back quick enough. It's never a case of, oh, God, I'm bored. If you're doing the 30 basics and you're getting bored, you just don't have a clarity of purpose. You get that clarity of purpose and you'll never be bored again. Ask those questions. Today, what did I do well? Today, what didn't I do well? And you have to ask that first one because you don't want to drive yourself into a state of despair, concentrating on just your negatives. You always want to recognize that there are 2 sides to it. So what did I do well? What didn't I do well? And what am I going to do about that next training session? You'll never get bored again. Let's have a look at some of these comments. Harry, Shian, is anyone else having a problem with streaming? It keeps breaking up on me and I'm in elements. So there is a problem, eh? I'm sorry about that. I'll keep going slowly. And if I get the message up top, I may pause just a little bit if that's okay. Michelangelo said, the problem for man is not that he aims too high and misses, but that he aims too low and hits. That's so cool. I think the importance of this idea should never be lost. That's true. My dad used to say, shoot for the moon and just keep heading there, doing your best you can. Okay, you got to aim high. Okay, let me keep going on this book reading because I will get back to it. But like I said, the main problem in repetition is not having a clear objective. It's one thing to do the same thing day in and day out, but it's very different to do the same thing with very clear. Stress that enough. Even for one blessed with limitless natural talent, without effort and sufficient discipline to keep up the effort of consistent training, it is very difficult to rise above mediocrity. On the other hand, if one lacks talent but is unwaveringly determined and disciplined in the adherence to regular hard training, progress will come without fail. With determination and the will to fight on, to keep on keeping on, one's heart becomes receptive and the instructor will go out of his way to help you as best he can. There is no room for egotism or selfishness in the spirit of perseverance. When one doubles with pain, more often it is the ego that cringes, not the body. The resilience of the body is truly amazing. Stories of superhuman endurance in times of selfless necessity. The body will weaken rapidly and stop. First overcome the weaknesses in your own heart, and the opponent you face will outwardly will seem insignificant. Solsai says, one living in the martial way carries his head low and his eyes high, reserved in speech and possessing a kind heart. He steadfastly continues in his training efforts. And it's that steadfastness of effort that makes all the difference. The Spirit of Osu and the Dojo Oath. The Spirit of Osu and the Dojo Kun, the training oath, are complementary. They are perfectly compatible. If the karateka embraces the quality of one, the qualities of the other will themselves naturally. One who lives in the Spirit of Osu is not bothered by triviality, remaining calm amidst all kinds of challenges. He is always alert. His life is based on the pursuit of truth. The Spirit of Osu and the spirit of self-denial are synonymous. He naturally respects others and is courteous and thoughtful. He is humble. He seeks only wisdom and strength, realizing all else to be so much wasted effort. One cannot appreciate the depth and significance of the Dojo Kun without grasping the Spirit of Osu. The aim of the karateka is to manifest in himself the Spirit of Osu. And that's what Mike Clark was referring to before. What makes sport and karate different is the objective of the goal. And there's no doubt that the reason team sport especially is so highly prized is because of that personal development that it offers. Also, Al, good to see you. Hope all's well your end as well. Hope everything's going well there, Al, with your wife. So it's true that sport also develops character, but it's a secondary part of the sport. There is no one will doubt that if you play sport and never win a competition or never win a game, it doesn't matter how well your character develops, you've missed the point of sport. Whereas with the martial arts, you can go your entire career and never actually have a fight. But if it serves its objective to improve the personality and to polish the soul, well, then it's done its job. The aim of the karateka is to manifest in himself the Spirit of Osu. It is the purify his character. There is no other way. One cannot achieve depth of character by relying on natural talents, on education, or luck. One must face life's trials as they come with poise and equanimity to gain the strength and wisdom. One must be prepared to fight on in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds. Even those people who do not pursue a martial art yet achieve greatness manifest the qualities of a warrior, the qualities of Osu, by being prepared to look trials squarely in the face and never bow to the weight of adversity. All training methods aimed at polishing the spirit reveal what is already within, albeit dormant to some degree or another. That inner perfection and the endless search to reveal it as our natural state is what appeals to us to establish the habit, know it now or in 1,000 lifetimes needed state. So why wait? Make your natural state that of a warrior facing the daily challenges of life with courage, consistency, and persistent effort. There is no rest. As Solsai taught us in the 11 mottos, life is like scaling a cliff. We must continue upwards without rest, or we falter and slip back. Following the martial way demands absolute and unfaltering devotion to the task at hand. That's a quote from Solsai. Karate, Solsai said, is the most Zen-like of all martial arts. It has abandoned the sword, the means that it transcends This means that it transcends the idea of winning and losing to become a way of thinking and living for the sake of other people in accordance with the way of heaven. Its meanings, therefore, I've slipped up a bit today, its meanings, therefore, reach the profoundest levels of human thoughts. Okay, so that's the reading that I wanted to present. I'm just going to relax my legs now that I've finished, cross my legs, because I've gone to sleep. It's a bit better. Hopefully my legs will come awake again. Shout out to Juddy Reed, young Judd, and his efforts in Melbourne. He's doing some great work. And this hoodie is one of Judd's hoodies. What's happened here? It's all twisted up. But anyway, that's the reading that I wanted to bring from the book, and I'd love to discuss it if anyone has any points they want to make. But the important point was that idea that is to become a warrior in life. Okay, and when Sri Yukteswar refers to becoming a warrior, he refers to that social class, Kshatriya, or warrior. And the reality is that the caste system in India is a little different to what it originally stood for. I want to read that. This is from Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. He says, the origin of the caste system formulated by the great legislator Manu was admirable. He saw clearly that men are distinguished by natural evolution into 4 great classes. Those capable of offering service to society through their labor, or sudras. Those who serve through mentality, skill, agriculture, trade, commerce, business life in general, they're the Vaisyas. Those whose talents are administrative, executive, and protective. That's the Kshatriya class. And those of contemplative nature, spiritually inspired and inspiring, the Brahmin class. Neither birth nor sacraments, nor study nor ancestry can decide whether a person is born into the Brahmin consciousness. The Mahabharata declares character and conduct alone can decide. Manu instructed society to show respect to its members insofar as they possessed wisdom, virtue, age, kinship, or lastly, wealth. Isn't that interesting? He said you give respect to all, but there is a hierarchy. And the hierarchy was first respect wisdom, then virtue, then age, respect your elders, then kinship, family, and lastly, wealth. Our society has it around the other way. We kind of infatuate over people who have we regard success in terms of money, not in terms of wisdom. Okay, and that's an interesting commentary. Riches in Vedic India were always despised if they were hoarded or unavailable for charitable purposes. Ungenerous men of great wealth were assigned a low rank in society. So anyway, that's an interesting commentary on what it means to be a warrior. The Indian concept of Kshatriya has nothing to do with birth or being born into a particular class. It 100% is determined by having that propelled heart where you want your life is all about finding the answers and understanding the true nature of things. So that's really quite interesting, I think. I think sport is about winning. Budo is about not know your enemy, but know yourself first. There's a famous quote from Socrates, I think. Man, know thyself. Okay, it's not thyself, one word. It's thyself, 2 words with a capital S. You have to know your real nature. Hey, Al, good to see you, man. Enjoying reading one of the things. I enjoyed feeling the energy. Good on you, Al. Good to see you, man. Nick Pettis' book in Japanese, Oreruna, talks about, I didn't know Nick had written a book in Japanese. Is it his book on his Uchideshi life rod, or is it a different book? Oreruna means don't break or remain unbroken. Talks a lot about that. He might have lost in the ring or in fights, but that he never lost. And he is one of my Kyokushin heroes. I mean, he's younger than me, and I can remember when he first turned up at Hombu. One day he's run up to me at about 65 kilos, 68 or 9 kilos. He goes, "Boss, my name's Nick, and I'm from Denmark, and I'm doing Uchideshi." He's got, damn, this guy's got a smile that went from here to here, and it's never gone. And he has been challenged, minimized, life. What Matsui, Matsui group did to him was atrocious. But like you said, Mike Lord, was it Mike? Rudd. Like you said, Rudd, he has just never bowed to the blows of adversity. And that's what it means to be a warrior. You never bow to those blows of adversity. Yes. I mean, isn't this just a fascinating area to discuss? This whole, why we train and the idea of being a warrior, and that the techniques that we master for gradings and so on are one thing, but what really makes all the difference is the polishing of the soul, like Mike Clark put in his book, that Sen Den Shin, that spirit of polishing the soul. I think that most of us here are lucky that we have our very experienced teachers around us. Well, yeah, good karma attracts you to good teachers. And I was very fortunate in my life. I really only had teachers for maybe 3 or 4 years of my whole life, to be quite honest. The first few years were very sporadic because I had to go to boarding school, so I didn't really get to the dojo often. Then when I was 15, 16, those years, I was very strongly influenced by Frank Everett, my instructor. Just loved everyone. He had a thing on the wall that said, "No strangers here, just friends we haven't met yet." And that really influenced me. This is why I love when people walk into the dojo. They come in from every martial art, every level of experience, every social group, and everyone's welcome. And that's the influence of Frank. And then, of course, my biggest influence was Masayama. Training with him in Japan made a difference. But I really only spent a few years under good instructors. The rest of the time, I had to fend for myself. I traveled around and I visited a lot of instructors. So I got to train with some of the best, with Gene LaBelle, with Benny the Jet, with Bill Wallace. In Japan, I trained with Hiroshige Shihan and Oishi Shihan. And Matsui, of course, was influenced. His technique and his approach to technical training was very influential. He came and lived with me in Brisbane for a month in 1988, and that influenced us all. And then there's the influence of people who aren't even martial artists, of course, Yogananda and yoga and swimming coaches. Funnily enough, I'm not even a swimmer, but the approach that swimming coaches have to training is always very, very influential to me. Introspection is a valuable tool. Yeah, I would even take that further, Mike. I say that introspection is probably the most valuable tool. Self-reflection is like a scalpel if you're honest with it. And if you can use introspection and daily self-reflection and sit down at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just sit down at the end of the day, even if, there's my mate Harley again. Those 3 questions I mentioned after training: what did I do well? What didn't I do well? What am I going to do about it? That's a form of introspection. Now you can take that into your life and reflect every day when you sit down. And I have a program that I work with businesses on, and I talk about you take 9 to 12 minutes at the end of the day to reflect on your day and plan tomorrow. Now, Mike Lorden mentioned there that introspection is that valuable tool. Well, it's one of the most valuable tools, because if you honestly, and the introspection has to be honest, you don't try and brush over the important things. But if you honestly use introspection like a scalpel and you cut out those little growths and leisure in life, well, then in no time flat, your whole personality will be very different. And the main area of the scalpel of introspection is emotional charges. And I understand that everyone comes from different experiences, and some people have had very difficult experiences that are the cause of emotional swings. But at the end of the day, one of Yogananda's sentences was, beware of the emotional reactions to the inevitable fluctuations of the phenomenal world. And that's one of my favorite all-time sentences. So if you can stay conscious of your emotional reactions to just the natural fluctuations of the world, well, then you'll be miles ahead. And that's what self-reflection is. That's what introspection is just simply looking at your emotional reactions to that happened. That's it's so interesting. Good on you for bringing that up, Mike Lorden. Appreciate that. But no, it's about what he learned from Japanese culture. I missed that. It's about what he learned from Japanese culture. Oh, you're talking about Nick Pettis. Okay, that's interesting. I'll speak to Nick about that. I was just talking to him the other day. I'll ask him about it and see if I can get a copy of it. Yeah, I mean, Nick Pettis is a fantastic mentor figure for youth. That's great. Roger, good to see you. Urs, thanks for your snap of the book. Yeah, no worries. It's really coming, and I'm really excited. I'm literally just a week or two away from setting up the page for the pre-orders of the book, and it's really exciting for me. So thanks. Yeah, good on you, Roger. Francis, good to see you, man. Damien, swimming was part of some Kenjutsu Koburi. Well, that's interesting. So it still has a relationship to Budo. I always think it's funny, that American swimmer who won like 20 gold medals at the Olympics. Swimming's a funny sport. You've got freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke, and butterfly, and they're all basically just different forms of swimming. So you can imagine track and field athletes, like, let's say, a champion sprinter, how many gold medals they win if they had a 50-meter sprint, a 100-meter sprint, a 50 meters running backwards sprint, a 50 meters hopping sprint, a 100-meter skipping sprint, a 100-meter skipping backwards sprint. I mean, it sounds stupid, but that's what swimming is. It's not how do we just get in the water and swim as fast as we can. We get in the water and swim in a particular way as fast as you can. So I'm sure that you'd have some of the track and field athletes would also have 20 medals if they had a similar sort of situation that they can compete against. Anyway, that's just my take on swimming. One of the students of my dojo, a psychologist, calls his training the unforgiving mirror. Well, there you go. That's so interesting you say that. A good teacher has been described to me as a flawless mirror. If you have a good teacher, you reflect your own strengths and weaknesses off that teacher. And if you're honest in training, that's exactly right. It's like an unforgiving mirror. Introspection is a honest introspection is an unforgiving mirror. And what you do, it's one thing to look in the mirror, I must say. It's one thing to look in the mirror. It's another thing to act on. You look in the mirror and go, oh, my hair's a mess today. That's life. I'm going to live with it. But if you look in the mirror and go, my hair's a mess, I better tidy it up. Well, now you're talking about taking some action, which is going to make a difference. Well, it's the same with introspection. The scalpel of personal self-discrimination is so valuable because not only do you go, what did I do well? And you look at the events in your life and what happened from day to day. And it's like that old poem. Anyone can, and the author of this poem is one of my heroes too. But it's like that poem says, anyone can smile when the world floats along like a song, but the one worthwhile is the one with a smile when everything's going dead wrong. So if you can smile under pressure, well, then you're really getting somewhere. If you're not sure whether you're there, just stop blaming. I have this thing. I'll show you. In fact, but this is one thing that I work with businesses and so on. We talk about this above the line, below the line. I may have shown you before. I'm going to draw it here. But above the line, you have, I think I've done it. Even as I write it, I recall doing it. And you have the line of character, and above the line, you have saw. Where is it? Did I rub it out? I did too. Above the line, you have saw, and below the line, you have bread. And the line is the line of character. And saw represents single-mindedness, ownership, accountability, responsibility. Bread represents blame, reasons, excuses, and denials. And 97% are below the line, okay? Because what will happen is we lash out at someone and then blame them. But the fact of the matter is there is no one else in the world, anytime, anywhere, to blame for what happens to you other than yourself. And you can argue that with me till the cows come home, but you'll never sway me, because from my experience, I've even looked at things like car accidents or accidents in the dojo, or events that'll happen. And if I'm really honest, at the end of the day, the outcome of that event, the event itself is out of my control, but what I determine from it and what I take away from it and how I react to it is 100% in my court. Okay, so yeah, there we go. The unforgiving mirror. It's true. You need a mirror. You need to reflect on yourself, self-reflection, but you need to then take action on it. It's all in just take a breath. Well, yeah, I got interviewed by the Fortified guys. I should get a link and give it to you, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But there's some nice guys who do some interviews on YouTube. But anyway, I did an interview there, and the whole theme of that interview was the single breath. And often people will get in touch after 30 years and go, "I used to train with you when I was a teenager or at university, and I've fallen off the rail, and I'm overweight. I've got the high flying $1 million income, the 4-car garage, and I still have to leave the Porsche outside because there's not enough room. But I'm smoking, I'm drinking, and I'm a broken former shadow of myself. So tomorrow you take 2. And if you have to persist on 2 for a week, that's fine. Just take the breath." From Apollo's ancient temple by the blue Ionian tide, speaking to us through the ages, comes this wisdom to abide. Know thyself. May this forever, throughout life, our footsteps guide. That's so cool, Steve. Is that, where's that from? Was that Socrates? I knew it was like ancient Greek of some sort, but there you go. Know thyself. But I would tend to write it like this. Or maybe it was Socrates making commentary on it. That would be the only thing that I'd say. But isn't that beautiful? From Apollo's ancient temple, Ionian tide, speaking to us through the ages, comes this wisdom to abide. And that's going back already. Who wrote that? If I need to know who wrote that. That could have even been written more recently, commentating on ancient Greece. Know thyself. May this forever, throughout life, our footsteps guide. Well, there you go. So that's that little section on the Budo from the Budo Karate Master Oyama, talking about the Spirit of Osu, I think is really valuable, because what it does, it directs us to the importance of being a warrior. And by being a warrior, I mean accepting, facing, as Yogananda wrote a beautiful poem called The Noble New. You should look it up. It's a 7-line poem that's one of the best poems ever written. I've got it. I can remember it in my head, but I won't bore you with reciting it here. But you look it up and face the battles of life with strength unchained. And that's the spirit of the warrior. Every day we're faced with battles. This is why Walt Whitman said that the theme of all the poems of all the poets who have ever been written is one. And that theme is the theme of war and the making of warriors. And that to me is so profound, because really at the end of the life, it's all about those daily battles. Even the Bhagavad Gita, that great scripture from India, it's about Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield of life. Okay, it's even called Kurukshetra, which means the battlefield of life. And he's between the two armies and he doesn't want to fight. And Krishna's saying, well, you've got to fight. He said, but I look over there have to fight. And what it is, it's an allegory of life. And when he's looking over at the enemy and he sees friends and family, well, they're his habits that he's used to. That's the habit of having the extra donuts and 2 sugars in the coffee, and the habit of sleeping in, and the habit of always seeking comfort within your comfort zone. Well, they're the friends and relatives and family on the enemy team's side that you have to battle. And this is why Krishna is saying to Arjuna, no, you got to battle. I don't care if they're your friends and family. You've still got to battle them. And so this is why life is just this incredible war, you know. And I remember listening to a lecture once in a state of peace without war, and he basically said, well, in 6,000 years of recorded history, there's only been about 200 years where there wasn't a war going on. And if you analyze it deeply within ourselves, it goes back to what Harry was saying about breath. Right now, if you just sit there and breathe out and don't breathe again, and what will happen is before you go unconscious, your body will naturally draw a breath in. Well, what that is a battle going on between the presence of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. You breathe in, you oxygenate the blood, everything's good. You have to take a breath for a while, but after a while, the oxygenated blood becomes deoxygenated, filled with carbon dioxide, and it needs to breathe out the carbon dioxide and breathe more oxygen in. Well, that's a war going on. With every breath you take, a state of health and a state of urgency in the body, you know. So that's the level that we're talking about with war, and that's why Walt Whitman says you got to be a warrior. Every poem ever written is about the theme of war and the making of perfect soldiers, he says. So there you go. I just wanted to read a little bit about the book. I hope you enjoy that. Yep, indeed, you got to take a breath to smell the flower. That's true too. Okay, Stephen Walters, if you can tell me where that poem is, that'd be a big help. Otherwise, I'll just highlight it if I can, and I'll look for it myself. But anyway, thank you for putting that. There you go. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you coming along. We went a full hour, even though the reading was a bit shorter, but I did digress a few times. I enjoyed that. I hope you get something out of it, and I hope you're looking forward to the book being republished as much as I am, because it's a really exciting project that is making headway. I did get held up because of the virus, because of, funnily enough, I had more time, but that time had to be devoted in other areas because I didn't have the income anymore. So thank you, everyone, for coming along. Appreciate your time and presence. Thank you again, everybody who came. Us, Daniel, good on you, buddy. Yep, I'll let everyone know when the book is. Thanks, Daniel Langworthy. Clarence from South Africa. Yep, I'll be speaking to you in good time about the book, of course. Francis Gravel, mon ami. Thank you, my friend. Good on you. Ben, good to see you, even though I didn't see your name earlier. Yeah, even if things are poles apart, they're still the same magnet. Well, that's a good point too. Isn't Rad? Okoshi itadaki arigatou gozaimashita. Paul, good. Dankeschön, mein Freund. Thank you. Ben, good. Thanks, buddy. Alan, good. Al, thanks again. And Al's one of my most loyal and supportive Patreon members. Like, there's a few of them who don't just, you know, that you got a choice of 3, 7, and 12. And Al's one of those people that goes, well, no, I think it's actually I'm getting more out of this. He even puts towards the cause a bit more than the 12. So I appreciate that very much, Al. It's not missed. Us, Rochelle, good on you. And Raj, thank you, everybody. See you Monday. I've got training from 5, but that's less than an hour. Raj, oreru na nihon soka nihon ga oshiete kureta. I'll copy that now and I'll look it up. Thanks, Rod. Appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. Stay warm. I'm warm in my Judd Reed Phyto hoodie. So I hope you are too. See you Monday at 3 p.m. Queensland.